You see, our sin paralyzes us spiritually, much in the same way that whatever the disease Aeneas had paralyzed him. It's a severe condition that separates us from a right relationship with God. And that separation is so vast that it is impossible for us in our own power to mend that gap. That's because God is perfectly holy, and we are anything but. Now, the word holy gets thrown around a lot in religious circles, and we all assume we know what that means. But contained within that word is the perfection that is God. It's the ultimate summation of the character of God. Within the word holy is the idea that the Lord is set apart as completely different from us. He is beyond time, He is beyond space, and He is beyond all rational human comprehension. He doesn't just love, He is love. He isn't just perfect, He is perfection. And on I could go and never begin to scratch the surface of who God is or what the word holy means. But the word holy is simply our attempt to sum up the entirety of God into one manageable word. You know, you could go on for days and days and days and days and days talking about the qualities of God, or you could just say He's holy. The problem with that is we use this word so much that we fail to grasp the meaning of what holiness is. We don't understand holiness. So even on our very best day, we can't hope to compare to a God like that because He is holy. And we're anything but. And if you can begin to understand the gap between our sinful state and God's perfect holiness, if you understand how vastly different we are, you also begin to understand just how wide the gap is that sin puts between us and God. It's huge. We can't cross that gap on our own. We have a severe condition, sin, and it requires miraculous help. Fortunately, as the great physician, the Lord has provided a miraculous way to heal us of the sin paralysis that keeps us from crossing that great expanse. And that miracle is salvation through Jesus Christ. Turn over to the right just a few pages to Romans chapter 5. In Romans chapter 5, I want you to look at verses 6 through 8. In these verses, Paul explains just how powerless we are and how miraculous salvation truly is. In Romans 5:6, Paul writes, "For while we were still helpless, at the appointed moment, Christ died for the ungodly." Just as Aeneas' paralysis kept him from being able to seek help on his own, our sin keeps us from being able to save ourselves from hell. Christ died for the helpless, the ungodly, the sinful. And that itself is a miracle. Continue, look at verse 7. "For rarely will someone die for a just person, though for a good person perhaps someone might even dare to die. But God proves His own love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Paul says that it's rare for someone to die for a just person. How much more rare is it that the sinless Son of God would die for sinners like us? Because that is so rare, folks, it has to be a miracle. Having a holy God lay down His life on your behalf is more rare than an honest politician. It's more rare than catching me in a suit and tie. It's rare. It's more rare than any stone you might find up the street at Jordan's Jewelers, and it's far more precious. The God of the universe sent His only Son to die in our place. The miracle of salvation is a gift from God. And it's a gift that we are powerless to secure on our own. Paul tells us in Ephesians 2:8 that we are saved by grace through faith. It's a gift of God. Not of works. Not of our own accord. Not of our own doing. He continues to tell us that God's gift of salvation was purchased with the blood of Christ. Remaining everything that he was, Jesus became everything he was not, and came to earth to live a sinless life, endure a brutal death, and experience a glorious resurrection. He did for us what we could never do for ourselves. In doing so, he brought us a miracle to cure our spiritual condition. And if you look at verse 35 back in Acts chapter 9, you'll see the impact that such a miracle can have. So all who lived in Lydda and Sharon saw him and turned to the Lord. This man who'd been paralyzed for 8 years got up, and the people of Lydda and Sharon witnessed Aeneas' new life, and they were moved to surrender their lives to Jesus Christ as their Lord. This is a perfect example of the fact that miracles advance the gospel. If you think back to some of the things we've looked at in Acts, you know this is true. Back in chapter 2 at Pentecost, the people heard the sound of a rushing wind as the Spirit descended on the disciples. The disciples were able to speak languages they'd never studied, the tongues of fire, 3,000 people added. Then in chapters 3 and 4, the Lord healed a paralytic using Peter, and another 5,000 people were added. Turn back to Acts 5 with me for just a second and look at verses 12 through 14. Acts 5, verses 12 through 14. Many signs and wonders were being done among the people through the hands of the apostles. By common consent, they would all meet in Solomon's colonnade. None of the rest dared to join them, but the people praised them highly. Now pay attention to this next part here. Believers were added to the Lord in increasing numbers. Why? Because of what happened in verse 12. Many signs and wonders were being done among the people. In other words, miracles were advancing the gospel. Do you have any idea what this means to us? If our salvation is a miracle secured by Jesus Christ, then our lives can be the miracle that people need to witness to be drawn to Christ.